Amazing. Thanks so much, Juice. I think we'll make a start. Anyone else who joins can join and join the conversation as and when. So thank you all for coming. We are the Race Equality Network. We're an organisation, charity and infrastructure body that supports grassroots organisations across Bradford and district. We've put on these talks today. We're going to have one once a day this week as part of Race Equality Week. The programme is online on Eventbrite and our social media platforms. And we really just want to bring everyone together and learn a bit about people's culture and history and background and what it means to be part of Bradford today. So the session is being recorded, but we encourage you to have your cameras on if you want to, engage with the session and use the chat to ask any questions, which we'll have time hopefully to answer at the end. And my name's Hattie and I'm joined by my colleague Adiba today to chair the session. And our speaker today is Vamosi from KaskoSan. And I will hand over to you, Juice. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for the opportunity, Hattie, and to the Race Equality Network. I'm very glad that I can deliver this presentation today, and I'm very thankful for the participants who decided to join us today to learn about the Roma, also known as Gypsies. In today's presentations, I'm going to try and give you a historical overview of the Roma people, how they ended up in Europe and all over the world, who we are. And I will also try and give you a bit of insight into the traditions we share globally, all Gypsy groups on planet Earth. So let's get into this. So my name is Gypsy Vamosi. I originally come from Hungary, from, I would say, probably the most traditional, one of the most traditional Gypsy groups. I'm actually a mix between two traditional groups, myself and my family. So on one hand, we are horse dealers who are called Lovara is the most popular name, most widely used name in the Roma community for horse dealers. There are other names used for horse dealers as well. That's why I'm saying that it's the most widely used one. So Lovara, and the other one is Kelderás, which means coppersmith, right? So these two mixes, it is who I am. And I grew up with Romani language, and I grew up with all the customs that Roma people will preserve to date. And I'm going to elaborate on those a little bit later. Romani language has taken me to lots of places. Starting at the age of 10, I started translating from my own community. I was speaking English and German back then, and we were asylum seekers in Germany, right, in 1989, right after the borders opened for East European countries to Western Europe post the fall of the Berlin Wall. And our family, just like many other Roma families from Hungary, Slovakia, Czech Republic, Romania, Bulgaria, Albania, would travel to Germany, to West Germany, to refugee camps, where my translation skills were first used by Roma people from Eastern Europe, which I've been doing in England as well. It was a very similar scenario. But Romani language also turned me into a Roma advocate since 1996 in our hometown in Page. Back then, the Roma leaders decided that this kid, meaning me, growing up with education, should become our leader. He's the only one getting educated in our extended family network. So they decided to appoint me to be the chair of a charity. But then later, a couple of years later, in '99, I founded a Roma youth charity. I didn't like the fancy offices in the town center. We decided to go into the midst of the Roma settlements, of the Roma ghettos. That's where we had our office. And that charity had 50 paid staff on its payroll by the end of the first year of operation. And it's still working to date. It grew very big, and it fulfills a very important role to date. I also started making films because of Romani language in 1997 back in Hungary with a Dutch TV company. We filmed for the Dutch public TV channel a film called The Sad Songs. And since then, I ended up making more and more films, and I carry on doing this to date. Actually, I've never stopped it since '97. And I had films here in the UK as well, on the BBC and Channel 4. I'm going to highlight those a little bit later in the presentation. I also ended up being an advisor to high-level political leaders, religious leaders, cultural leaders. So, for example, I advised 2 past presidents of the World Bank, but I was also a personal advisor for 5 years to the vice president of the EU, namely Nelly Cruz. And I also advised several governments. And I'm also the founder of KaskoSan in 2009. But what is KaskoSan, right? Let's try and figure this out on the next slide. And I'm going to tell you about the people on the photo as well in a second. So I'll give you a bit of hint. It's the first question of introduction that 2 Roma ask each other the first time they meet, right? This was on the flyer as well that Hattie and the guys used to promote this event. Now I'm going to do a countdown from 5 to 0. And if anyone has a guess on what KaskoSan could mean, which is the first question that 2 traditional Roma, 2 traditional Gypsies would pose to one another the first time they meet. So the countdown starts now. You can stick your answers into the chat box if you have one. So 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. All right, so let's see if we have any guesses. Who are you? How is the road? Okay. How are you? Sorry, how are you? Oh my God, Matty Mitchell. I owe you a pint of beer, I think. Whose are you? Matty, if you may tell me, how did you know? Very few people can figure this, you understand? I've been trying to pose this question to many people for many years, and people wouldn't know. Yes, exactly. It means whose are you? And whose are you means not necessarily who your parents are, but which family network you belong to, which caste you come from. That's the first thing you want to figure out when you're a traditional Gypsy about another traditional Gypsy, because that will help you decide the depth of engagement with the other person. Now, actually on the photo right next to me, well, there are 2 males in the midst of the 4 people, right? So I'm hoping you can recognize me. And there are 2 males wearing glasses, right? So the younger male, the bald one, is called Jika Petru. He was the first guy who managed to answer to this question to me when I attended conferences as a Roma interpreter. I attended hundreds of, more than 300 conferences all over the world as a Gypsy translator. And I kept trying to seek out the traditional Gypsies, because traditional Gypsies from the world of Roma, which I will talk about later, normally do not engage with the outsider world at all, right? So that's why I've never managed to find anyone who would have been able to answer this question to me. Mostly when you get educated as a Gypsy and you engage with the outsider world, you lose your ties with the community. Otherwise, you're not able to operate. It's very, very difficult to operate between the 2 worlds and to have your feet in both worlds. It's either this or that, unfortunately. It's very, very hard. Jika is another, very similarly to myself, he's the only one in his extended family network who got educated and who got engaged with the outsider world. So it was a huge relief for me to meet with him. And then on our left side and right side, we got 2 famous filmmakers, actually. On the left side, the female is called Esther Hoidu. She is the director of many movies, many documentaries, but one of the very important ones is about the Roma Murders, right? 12, 13 years ago, several Roma people were murdered in their home just because of their ethnic origin in Hungary. And just in 2 weeks' time, actually, on the 23rd of February, there's going to be the commemoration of one of the victims, the 4-year-old Robbie and his 20-odd-year-old father. They threw a hand grenade into their home, and as they were escaping the house, they were shot as well by rifles as they were trying to run away. So let's try and carry on with the presentation if it allows me to do that. Okay, it works now. Yes, it is also an online brand. So we founded a social network for Roma people in Romani language. I was working as a marketing director for an IT company called Howdy Group. And the owners of the company agreed to localize this for free for the benefit of the Roma Gypsy community. And it ended up being the biggest Gypsy social network. At its peak, we had 500,000 visitors on our page. And this hasn't happened since then, really, that you met where anyone managed to gather such a huge number of Roma people on one social network. Unfortunately, Facebook defeated us like it defeated MySpace and many other much greater competitors than us. But the spirit of the community and the brand is still alive, and people are very familiar with it. Now, it also became a charity, right, back in 2014. And since then, we operate in Oldham, Bolton, and in Bradford as well, supporting roughly 1,000 Roma individuals on a regular basis. You can find more information about the charity and our activities, which are actually really exciting, on our website. We also had an article covering our activities in the close collaboration with Bowling Park Primary School in Bradford by The Guardian. We had a coverage last summer, which you're also welcome to Google. So if you Google our name and The Guardian, you will find the article, and some short documentaries as well we directed and produced for the charity about the life of East European Roma in Bradford, which I highly recommend again to watch. So let's look at the origin of the Roma. It is really hard to give really precise data about the origin of the Roma, because there's no history of literacy, unfortunately, in the Roma Gypsy community. There are no written records about what happened to Gypsies in the past, because we have always been an oral culture, and that outsiders would say things about us which have never really corresponded to reality, and that has become like a huge pile of stereotypes and prejudices against the Gypsies, which have been spread in the outsider world. Gypsies have no contribution to that and no control over that either. And it is happening to date, mostly through mass communication and the media in present day societies globally. It's a global phenomenon. You know, as there is anti-Semitism, there's a phrase that has been that people came up with, and it's called the anti-Gypsism, which is the hatred against the Gypsies and all these stereotypes and prejudices that have emerged throughout the centuries about Gypsy people. So we can only rely on linguistics and genetics data. I need to tell you as well, in brackets, that we had our DNA test done in the family, and we found that these theories, which depict the journey of Roma families from India to present-day Europe and all over the world, are absolutely right. That's what the gene pool testing also proves in our family. So what are these dominant and emerging theories? Let's have a look at them. So the most popular one says that we come from the northwest of India. It is the most popular we got because we have the strongest evidence in terms of language and gene pool backing up this assertion that we come from the northwest of India. Professor Marcel Courtiard, I'll try and move this out of the way. I may be able to do that. Amazing. So Professor Marcel Courtiard, he passed away unfortunately last year in COVID, an amazing man himself. He was researching Romani language as a linguist for many decades. And he found very strong evidence that Roma people came from Kannauj, from the city of Kannauj in India. 1018 AD, a conqueror called Mahmud of Ghazni was invading northern parts of India, and Roma people ran away from the city of Kannauj, which has a very strong legacy of culture, really. A very rich culture is present in Kannauj to date. Another really important theory to share with you is, if my slide allows me to, yes, it does now, thank you very much, is coming from Ian Hancock and other theorists as well, who say that Roma used to be different ethnicities, people speaking different languages in northern parts of India, who were united to fight back the northern invasion. And these people ended up running away. They were enslaved, they were defeated militants, and they would use the word gage to describe outsiders, which meant traitor or civilian, a non-militant person. And then they ran away from India, trying to seek home. Another theory says that we come from different parts of northern India, and it wasn't the one-time exodus. It was several waves of migration in the span of 2 centuries from 900 to 1100 AD that would leave northern parts of India. And there was a gene pool testing conducted of Roma communities in 2 Serbian provinces as well, according to which we come from the south of India. And then also there is the Indo-Greek kingdom theory, which I came across actually here in the UK since I live here permanently for the last 10 years. It's my Asian friends who told me about the Indo-Greek kingdom. I've not heard about it, but this would seem to back up the fact that why we have close to 30%, for example, in our family, close to 30% Greek genes, 30% Indian, 25% from the north of India, within that from Kashmir, and we've got 5% from the south of India, right? And then we've got close to 30% Greek blood as well. So that, and a huge number of ancient Greek words, as well as an ancient Greek judicial system called kris, which is an ancient Greek word, again, not a Gypsy word. So yes, these are the first mentions of Roma when they arrived in Europe. Actually, the very first mention is not indicated on the map, is from the 5th century AD. A group of musicians would come to Europe to play. And there was a king called King Sind in India, where the Roma musicians, where the Gypsy musicians would play in the royal court. So they were like the cream of the Roma community, if you like. And they ended up being the cream to date, I would say. They have always been at the forefront of integration or social inclusion. They have always been at the forefront of engaging with the outsider world, as it has been like that to date. We are planning an event in Bradford in a couple of months' time, if all goes well, fingers crossed if you get the funding. We are going to do an exhibition where we are going to have exciting, really exciting content available for you guys about the past UK and encounters with East European Roma reaching back centuries as well. So unbelievable data we managed to find. Yeah, so as you can see, once again, in the 14th, 15th century, large number of Roma were already present in Europe. Now, when they arrived in Europe, they were subject to slavery, right? The first records come from the 13th century, and Roma were liberated from slavery in 1863 in the 19th century. So if you look at it, you know, this is the longest form of slavery in modern day history. Our African-American brothers and sisters endured 400 years, as the famous tune from Bob Marley also says. And unfortunately, Roma in Eastern Europe needed to face an extremely dark phase in their history, in our history. We arrived in large numbers with the Tatars in 1241 when they invaded European countries. And well, it's a matter of perception. They were saying that we were auxiliary troops. Some others say that we were their slaves. But that when they arrived, they definitely sold us. And it was very cheap to buy Gypsy slaves back then. You could buy a Gypsy child for the equivalent of 40p. So they were traded in big numbers as well. It was the Christian Orthodox Church that was running the business with the royals in present-day Romania. And the word gypsy actually meant, sorry for the typo in there, just noticed there's a typo in the word gypsy. So the word gypsy actually meant slave, right? So for several centuries, there were the Gypsy Laws, which meant slave laws. So it wasn't just applied to the gypsies, but because we constituted 90% of all slaves, right? This has become a label for us in Eastern Europe. And the trading was happening because we were a cheap product. Our ancestors were a cheap product on the slave market. Our ancestors were trading in the tens of thousands as well. And we were hired as domestic workers, agriculture workers. We had metal working skills that we brought from the East, gold panners, all sorts of trades, really, whichever you could use Roma for. Now, we tried to run away from that slavery, and many groups managed to do that as well, indeed. So, for example, some of these groups also reached Spain. However, when they reached Spain, they faced a very strong assimilation policy there, where Roma people who used their mother tongue, they would have their tongues cut out, right, to make sure they wouldn't speak it again, which was a very convincing measure by the royals back then in Spain. And today, the vast majority of Roma people in Spain, as well as in present-day Hungary, the vast majority doesn't speak the language because of this policy in place. Now, many Roma in Spain wanted to run away from this very dark reality, and they would cruise all the way to the UK. Some of them, as you're aware, there's been, or you may be aware, there's been Romani Gypsy travelers in the United Kingdom since the late 1400s, early 1500s, and the first Gypsy Laws also were introduced in the early 1500s. And Gypsies, even though they ran away from Spain, in the UK they were enslaved again, and it was they could tattoo a letter V on the shoulder of a gypsy, which signified a vagabond, and you were free to do whatever you wanted to with a person with a V tattooed on their shoulder. So you could kill them, you could enslave them, or whatever you wanted to do with them, and no law would be after you. But there have been many Roma as well who went to the Americas. I met personally a Roma person from New York called George Kaslow, who was a chief judge within the Gypsy community in the traditional Gypsy judicial system, which is the ancient Greek judicial system called Greece. And he showed us actually that he had this document proving that his ancestors were one of the Pilgrim Fathers founding the United States. And the reason being was that Columbus would also take prisoners or slaves, whichever way you want to call them, who were gypsies, on his third ship to the Americas, right? So, but we ended up going in large numbers in the 18th and 19th centuries, really. The lady you can see on the photo is from Mexico City. It's a photo from 1936. She looks identical to how Roma would look in Eastern Europe. And then there were Roma who fled to the forests in the Carpathian Mountains, and we stayed there for centuries. And we filmed some of these families that moved from the forest to the UK. They've never seen a town before in their life, because they've never been given permission to enter the local village or the local town. They never had access to any kind of services. And it's just unbelievable to see their reality, really. I will try and show you this footage. So this is for Channel 4. We made this film 6 years ago, I think it was. It was called Keeping Up with the Khans. It had 4 episodes, and this was the Roma episode here. You can see Effie Khan, the director, and my colleague Bolly on the right side next to him. And I will try and launch the video now. So as you can see, kids had no proper clothing. It was in the midst of winter. Oh, sorry, it was in the midst of winter, no proper clothing. It was very cold. And houses have no doors, no windows in them. And we also saw rats running around. The rubbish was not taken away at the point of our visit for 25 years. And they would wash their pots in the puddle where the rats urinate as well. As a result of that, there's lots of illnesses, very young death rate. Roma in the community die very young, unfortunately. A 60-year-old Roma is supposed to be a very old Roma. So it's a very, very sad reality that Roma need to face. I need to get the door. I'm really, really sorry. I apologize. Oh, it's an Amazon delivery. Sorry, guys. So back here now. So before the Holocaust, which I'm sure everyone heard of, so after Roma were liberated from slavery, they started persecuting us, right? So suddenly there was a large group of people with no homes, no education, and no skills, right? So we were subject to slavery for many centuries, more than 5 centuries. And we were not developed, we were not educated. Obviously, when you're a slave, nobody cares about you and will use you until you die. So they could do anything they wanted to with Roma people wherever they saw them. And Roma has started becoming a burden for many towns and villages when they saw these people, homeless, a large group of homeless people. They were the only ones who were not white, the only people of color back then. For many centuries, we were the first Indians to come to Europe. And yeah, it was a really, really harsh reality. So they tried to tackle this by introducing Gypsy Laws. And that's when the first conferences started being organized, going to hotels and having agendas, dressing up nicely, having fancy meals, and talking about the poor gypsies and their problems, how to sort them out, as you can see on the forest, right? So what are we going to do with this large group of people? They keep coming and begging for food. They keep wanting to be in warm. They're causing lots of trouble, these people. So they set up an organization, which later became, well, actually, that was the initial name as well, Interpol. So Interpol was founded specifically to sort out the gypsy problem, right? And to try and find a solution finally to something that nobody could tackle and nobody really understood. So then they decided, why don't we introduce national IDs? So that's why national IDs were introduced in many European countries in the first place. Many people forgot about this. So they can better control and monitor the journey of the gypsies, where they travel, what they do. And these national IDs were registered in a central system, as they are today for everyone in Europe. So this is an image where they started gathering Romani gypsies, mostly in Central and Eastern Europe. Oh my God, lots of horror stories in any family that I speak to, including mine and my wife's. It's really, really unbelievable. So she's, for example, called Marish. She's 84 years old. She's still alive. She's the very last Holocaust survivor in our community in Hungary, in Southwest Hungary. And a National Geographic, sorry, when I talk about this, it becomes a little bit harder and sometimes I lose my thoughts. So a National Geographic photographer visited Page 50 years ago, and we're going to see some of his images on the next slide, I think. And he made a short film, returned 50 years after his first visit to the same town, which is our hometown in Page, Southwest Hungary. And he interviewed Marish, my wife's grandmother, about her experiences in the Holocaust, who told him, among many things, that she would be taken to the concentration camp that you can see on the photo now, on the right side, the black and white photo. And she would remember, she says in this video, that they would be stood at the bottom of the hill, and then the officers or the soldiers would be on top of the hill, and they would, every other day or every third day, they would throw down a bit of bread from the top of the hill, but it was all muddy. So if you were not good enough to catch the bread, you would carry on starving. So her mom would use a long traditional gypsy skirt, right, or apron actually, that she had in front of the skirt to catch the bread that the officers would throw down from the top of the hill so they could survive. She's describing very, very bitter reality there in the concentration camp. So the Holocaust was the final solution to sort out the gypsy problem after the liberation of slavery in 1863. They tried for 60, 70 years. They couldn't find a good solution. So the best solution was to kill them all. And to gas them in gas chambers. So as a result, according to several sources, 500,000 Roma were murdered in the Holocaust. There are people who say that even more than 500,000 Roma. And the Roma Holocaust was the very last one to receive political recognition. It is mainly thanks to Romani Rosa, a German Romani activist, who had a famine strike, famine protest in the concentration camps with some other Roma in order to fight for the recognition. And since then, he founded the Roma Holocaust Museum and Memorial and Research Center in Heidelberg, Germany, doing really important work. We've got another one in Washington, D.C. I actually had the chance to visit both in the past. So after the Holocaust, communism came in Eastern Europe, which again was a very dark period of life for many Roma families as well. So Roma would live in either towns or Roma settlements, right? Most of the Roma, I would say 90% of the Roma during communism would live in the so-called gypsy settlements or the mahalas or ghettos, where they would have no infrastructure whatsoever. So no running water, nothing you can ever imagine, hardly any clothing, hardly any food, whereas very few of the Roma, the elite of the Roma Murders musicians, still are very probably, I would say in large numbers, the Roma musicians who would travel to see royals, presidents, heads of states, and play music for them, and they would wear suits and live in cities in nice apartments, but very few of us managed to lead that lifestyle. Now, just looking at my clock, okay, I still have time. So 90% during communism, 90% of Roma were in employment. So many Roma to date, elderly Roma, would have very positive recollections about the communism because they were in jobs, right? So then there would be a huge difference between East European Roma and Roma living in Western Europe and in the UK. In Eastern European Roma, they were forced to settle and live in houses. On the right side, we can see a photo from Lunik 9 in Košice, Eastern Slovakia. These places, these flats are extremely run down. There's no rubbish collection in the area. And on the left side, on the black and white photo at the bottom of the screen, we can see caravans, right, that you guys are probably familiar with here in the UK. Actually, tonight, there's going to be an amazing documentary starting. It's a series, I think, with 4 episodes. And this one has been produced by Jake Bowers, a Romani Gypsy activist himself, an absolutely amazing man. I highly recommend for everyone to watch it. I think it's going to be at 7 p.m. tonight or 9 p.m. on Channel 4. It's something you shouldn't miss. And then the launch of the Roma movement, which started in 1971 in Orpington, right here in England. And on the photo, actually, I'm not sure if you can recognize in the midst of the photo, that bald gentleman received an Oscar in the past, right? His name is Yul Brynner. He was of Roma descent as well. He spoke Romani language, and he also attended the very first International Gypsy Congress here in the United Kingdom. And next to him, around him, we've got Roma intellectuals, writers, poets, artists who all gathered to address the Roma diaspora and the fragmentation in the Gypsy community and the discrimination and the hatred and the persecution against the Roma. This yielded lots of good stuff, actually. However, many Roma wanted to escape Eastern Europe because the situation just got more and more dire. After the fall of communism, you remember I told you that 90% were employed. Now suddenly 90% were unemployed, right? So after the fall of communism, there was a rush and a competition to build a new democratic society. And Roma were the last people to access the new opportunities, obviously. So that's why this very high figure of unemployment. So that means that there have been generations since the fall of communism, since 1989, growing up without seeing a person in their extended family who was in actual employment, right? So it's unbelievable, the lack of, the extent of hopelessness in the Roma communities. Also, the form of segregation in the field of education carried on, being the mainstream form of education for Roma children, which meant they would not have to go to school, or if they needed to go to school, they would go to a rundown school where they wouldn't have enough teachers, and they would have teachers who would be kicked out from all other normal mainstream schools, which means that Roma children didn't get education and carried on this wave of carried on increasing the wave of unemployment for several generations, which is happening to date, really. In spite of all the EU funding that has been injected into the Roma inclusion from Brussels, targeting several Central and East European Roma countries, despite all the hard efforts that Roma charities have been trying to do, saving lives of Roma people in Central and Eastern Europe, and despite the Roma political representation, Roma never had anything to do with politics. So with Roma in the past, centuries ago, when we would come across someone in power and they would ask us, who is your representative? Who do we need to talk to? Roma never had one. We have always been a system of family networks, but then sometimes we would say, just to be able to negotiate and to pass through, we would say, oh yes, of course we have our leaders. This is our Gypsy King. But in reality, we never had monarchs. We never had any political leaders, if you like. We've never believed in politics. Gypsy people never believed really in politics because politics have always oppressed the Gypsies and enslaved the Gypsies, and has always been very rude and harsh to Gypsies. So Gypsies never had any positive experience with politics. That's why it's really, really hard to get them engaged. And despite the emerging local and international Roma elites, there's a larger number of Roma intellectuals now. They're gaining university degrees and getting into positions, but still the number is very, very low when looking at the entirety of the Roma community. Anti-Gypsyism aggravated, unfortunately, since the fall of communism. It's just, you can just openly be say really nasty things about the Gypsies and nothing will happen to you. So for example, very recently now, a Roma police officer, a female who was virgin, about to get married, was knocked out conscious after an evening dinner with two male colleagues, and she fell unconscious, and they raped her while she was unconscious, also filmed it, and they started circulating this video. Now this video came out, and she sued them, but in Hungary she couldn't find justice, so the police officers just carry on working and doing their thing, which happened now. So the reality hasn't changed at all. It actually got worse. Starvation has been on the rise as well. Unfortunately, especially in winter seasons in Roma communities, it is unbelievable what you can see in Eastern Europe. And Roma have been shut in their homes as well, and they carry on being attacked. Today, this hasn't changed. So this is the photo of the young boy being buried along with his young dad in 2009. On the 23rd of February, they were shot in their home as they were trying to escape the burning house. Yeah, extremely sad realities. And this is a photo I took of, if you recognize the lady in the middle of the picture, she is a famous presenter that started out on BBC Three and carries on working on the BBC platform. At the point when I met her and produced this film for her, she had 63 documentaries then, 3 years ago it was. So she's called Stacey Dooley. If anybody doesn't know her, I highly recommend checking out her documentaries, and especially this one which we made about Gypsy kids, where she found out about the reality where 90% of children in state care homes are of Gypsy origin, right? So in Hungary, there is still this very strong perception or belief in place that for Gypsies, it's much better for Gypsies to be removed from their parents and to lose their ties and their roots, and to brainwash them so they can become like a proper white citizen. And actually, let me just say as well that on the photo, we've got Bernard Rourke, right? He currently works for the European Roma Rights Center, previously for the Open Society Institute, funded by George Soros, American-Hungarian billionaire, and a very good friend and one of my teachers, reaching back decades. He's been in Hungary for decades himself. And Steph Atkinson, we can see he's back, is a very famous director here in the UK, with many awards as well. Is a widely celebrated director and a good friend. Now I'm going to tell you a little bit about the traditions. It's 12:43, looking at my clock, so that means that I've got more time to tell you more things. So girls and women versus boys and men. Even though, let's say I am a Christian Roma, right? And I grew up in a Christian Roma family. However, I grew up seeing that men and women are separate, right? Girls and boys have different roles. And this separation is very important, not in all communities, but in the traditional communities, that's how it goes, right? And again, not in all communities, but in traditional communities, virginity cult is very important, that a young girl needs to get married without seeing any boy before she sees the husband, her husband, who ends up being her husband for good. Normally the marriages last for good as well. This is actually a snapshot from a film called The Gypsy Matchmaker, directed by Ben Steele. You could see him on one of the photos on the previous slide. And Ben was amazed to see how we keep up our traditions to date without a country, without a written history and being purely an oral culture. This is a film we made in several towns in the UK, but this particular scene was shot in Bolton, actually. So the weddings would last for 3 days and 3 nights that we do. Okay, funerals, I didn't put a picture on. You know, in Roma culture, you're not supposed to say things that come from the world of impurity. You know, we've got this distinction of purity and impurity. So, and we understand the power of words as well. Therefore, you would not say things which belong to the world of impurity or things that may bring bad luck on your family and your community. You will not utter those words at all. With funerals, Roma people, we have a saying actually, when you say such a thing that you're not supposed to say or might incite negative energy, then you're supposed to say, may it fall on stones and wood, right? Or another one we say is, may it be far away from us, dura mendar. Or as we say many times, this is the dura mendar category. So yeah, funerals are one of those. When somebody dies, women cut their hair, men trim their hair, and start growing their beard as well. And they wouldn't change clothes until the actual funeral ritual take place, until the person is actually buried. And then there are many other customs around funerals as well. So language is a very important part of our traditions, of our culture. The vast majority of the gypsies all over the world still speak the language, I would say. Probably 70 to 80% of the gypsies still speak the language. I'm saying this based on my experience. I've been all over the world and translated in all gypsy communities. I actually learned also all gypsy dialects myself. And it's amazing if you speak one dialect, you know, you spend half an hour, 1 hour with another person you've never spoken to before from a different dialect, and you will be able to understand each other. And it's absolutely amazing to discover how identical our culture is. When you speak the language, it's much easier to discover it. But even when you don't speak the language, you can discover it. And it's always an amazing experience for gypsies to figure out the commonalities, even though we've been living apart for sometimes even 5 centuries. So for example, the Romani gypsies that came to England in the 1500s and us coming here and meeting with one another and discovering the common roots is just an absolutely beautiful experience that we all take pride in. However, there are some Roma communities that lost the language, like, for example, most of the Hungarian Roma, most of the Spanish Roma, most of the British Roma. And even though they lost the language, they preserved the thousands of unwritten rules that are passed down from one generation to another, mostly non-verbally. You can only learn these rules by growing up in the Roma community. And these rules, there are different kinds of branches of law, if you like. So Romanipe is the Roma identity, right? And Pachiv is like the civil law, the Gypsy civil law, if you like. And it's got like thousands of rules, many rules around how you're supposed to behave as a young girl, as an adolescent girl, as a grown-up woman, as an elderly woman, the same to young boys, a young man, a mature man, and an elderly man. So there are lots of rules around all your rules. And I was going to show you the book. Unfortunately, I left it in the room, in the living room. So Mandy Pierliewski from Leeds Beckett University very recently invited me to co-author a chapter in a book where we talk about, where we analyze early childhood development, actually, and we're looking at childhood development from a Romani perspective, with the Gypsy eyes, and what the values and the focus for Roma parents is when bringing up a child. I highly recommend it for you guys to read it. It's called Childhood in More Just Worlds, and W.A. Smith is also selling the book actually now. If you're interested, reach out to me and I'll be very happy to send you more details about the book and the chapter itself that we did with Mandy. And religions, right? That's a question many people ask me. We always take the religion of the host country wherever we go to. So we've got half of the Roma, I would say, are Christian and the other half are Muslim. We've got a huge Muslim diaspora living all over the world, but especially in the Balkans and in Asia, most of the Roma would be Muslim. In Central and Western Europe, most of us would be Christians. Yeah, and these are the list of references here. I can't believe that I did this on time as well. So it's 12:49 now. I think I was told that it should be 45 minutes long. So this is where we are. I'm going to stop sharing my screen.
Thank you so much, Juice. That was fantastic.
Thank you.
Thank you. That's brilliant. I certainly learned a lot. So I believe, in line with the theme of Race Equality Week this year, is actions, not just words. Do you have an action that you can propose to the attendees that they can do to kind of even more improve their awareness of Roma culture, or take part in it, or attend something?
Yes, with Gypsies, we always need people who want to help us. You know, people who have a charitable heart and thinking. We always have problems going on. So right now, for example, there are actually two actions, but there's one which I would like to highlight. You may have come across the news about the comedian Jimmy Carr on a Netflix show here in the UK, making comments about Gypsies and the Holocaust and making it a subject of mocking, right? And Holocaust is not a laughing matter. There's a campaign in place that you can join and sign. I'm going to stick the link in the checkbox right now. There it is for you. So if you guys want to join us and sign the petition against Jimmy Carr, actually the surname Carr, oh, I'm not going to say it again. It's an obscene word in Romani Gypsy. Can you imagine? You know, he's got that name as well. So all Gypsies speaking the language know by his name that he's a man you can't trust. So it means something very rude, right? His family name. So please go and sign that. Also, another thing, we will have very soon news coming out on BBC Look North this week about a campaign where we are raising money on a GoFundMe page for 300 individuals to travel from Bradford to London to sort out their EU settled status. We were the first charity to organize buses for Roma families that cannot afford a trip to London, have never been to London, have no understanding about travel in the UK. Or administration either. So we are trying to raise money for these 300 individuals as well to go from Bradford to London ASAP to get their passports sorted, to prevent them from getting deported from the UK and to get them regain access to healthcare, to schools and jobs. You can imagine there are many Roma families now that cannot afford to access these services. So I'm sure you can all imagine how hard it is for many Roma families facing evictions and starvation, food shortages on a day-to-day basis right now, which is an extremely sad and heartbreaking reality. I don't know if there are any questions. I'll be very happy to answer them.
Yeah, we do have a couple of minutes for questions. If anyone has any, please unmute and ask. And I'm also going to put an evaluation form in the chat, which it would be really helpful if you could click on and complete. Does anyone have any questions? KaskoSan?
Yeah, Juice, I was fantastic. Really enjoyed the talk. I'm so, obviously I didn't know much about the Roma community, but I'm so surprised at the links with, obviously my parents are from an Indian background, and to know there's some links to India, that really fascinates me. The Roma community here, and I didn't know about all the slavery that you guys have gone through. So brilliant.
Thank you very much. Oh, that was very touching. Thank you so much. Yes, indeed. You know, me personally, I'm 30%, but there are 30% Indian me. But I've got somebody else in the extended family who's 52% Indian. You understand? So within one family, you get these mixes, you know, or brothers and sisters from the same parents. One of them Indian looking and the other one Greek looking. And then people come and they say, "Oh, Gypsies are stealing children. That's why they have a white child as well in the family." Whereas it's our ancestry, that's our heritage, right? We actually come from two ancient cultures, if you like, you know, the ancient Indian and the ancient Greek, you know, so some of the strongest civilizations in the history of humanity, I would say. If there are no more questions, I really like playing songs as all Gypsies do, right? and we're doing lots of culture now because we understand that Roma outsiders have no understanding of who we are. So if you guys are interested in in music and learning about history and more about culture. We are tapping into a very exciting group of people in Bradford, musicians and performers. So get in touch with us. We're very happy to do that.
Hi, Juice. Sorry, before you start, can we
Okay.
just, is there any more questions? I think someone's asked some questions on the chat, because Hattie might have to go. What is the name of the programme on Channel 4?
Well, I don't think you will be able to find it online now because they took it off the programme. But there were several films. I mean, 2 films I would recommend, which I produced for Channel 4. One of them is the Gypsy Matchmaker. You can actually Google that and find it on Ben Steele's on the director's page. You can watch the whole documentary. It's a 50-minute long documentary. We earned an RTS nomination with that, actually. We finished second with that film. I highly, highly recommend it to check it out. You get to learn a lot about us and the very tragic realities of Roma families in the UK. And the other one, so the Gypsy Matchmaker is one of those, and the other one is Keeping Up with the Khans. If you get in touch with me directly, you can get my contact details from Hattie, but I put them up on the very first slide as well. I'll try and share that with you again, on the second slide actually. So you can see my slideshow from current slide. Yes, so this is my email address, juice@KaskoSan.org, and that's me on Twitter @JuicyVamosi. On Twitter.
You put it in the chat box, Juice, then they'll be able to see your email.
All right, okay, I'll put it in the chat box. Very, very, very good.
Okay, thank you. Before you play us out, just to remind everybody that we have another session tomorrow at the same time, and that's with KaskoSan Mystery from the Bradford Hindu Council, and he'll be talking about him and his father's journey and the important milestones for the Bradford Hindu, for the Hindu community in Bradford today. So if you use the same link, you can join us tomorrow, and again, it'll be played on BCB radio at 4 p.m. tomorrow, as it is being done today. If anyone's got no more questions, then Juice, you can take it away and play us out.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for the opportunity, everyone.
Thank you.
Just a bit of a taster there for you guys. So thank you very much for the attention and the interest, everyone. I'm really, really glad and moved that you came. And thank you for the opportunity once again, Race Equality Network. Keep going, guys. You guys doing amazing work.
Thank you so much. Thank you, everybody, for attending. Feedback would be brilliant. And again, have you put your email in the chat box, Juice? Yeah, so feel free to contact. Yeah. Thank you all so much.
Thank you. Bye,
Thank you.
everyone.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.